All right, this will be an interesting recording, and this will be an interesting time because I was very, very ill last week, and my eardrum ruptured, so I cannot hear out of my right ear, which means that I cannot really listen to gauge and test my audio or anything like that. So I just kind of have to click record and go, which is exactly what I'm doing. So, one of the books that I read recently, it's actually been a little bit since I finished it because I haven't been feeling up to recording, was the Navidad incident, or the downfall of Matthias Guili, or Guili. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, but it's a fake name for a fake place anyway, so I don't need to feel too bad about it this time. By Natsuki Ikezawa and translated by Alfred Brinbaum. And the reason that I ended up on this book was, to be honest, I don't remember. I found it a few years ago, and I saw that it had magical realism and a Japanese author and was a novel, and that was about all I needed. The fact that it was translated by the translator, an early translator of Murakami's works, definitely helped motivate me to buy it, but it's just not a book that you hear mentioned a lot, and that it seems just intrigued me. Just there wasn't many people talking about it, so I got a copy, and it's sat on my shelf. And one of the things with being so sick was not just in terms of reading, but in terms of a lot of things that I was kind of going through in sort of a cycle of. It threw off my rhythm really, really, really hard. So everything that I was reading, everything I was planning on reading kind of got knocked out of kilter. And so I just picked up this book as a short thing that I could probably, quickly get through while I was recovering. And it was certainly that. And so to give a sort of brief overview of the book, summary of the book, it is set in an island called Navidad, a small republic island in the Pacific Ocean called Navidad. It was once colonized by the Germans, and then it was colonized by, I think it was the Spanish, and then the Germans, and then the Japanese, and then for a brief period of time, and kind of the Americas, or the United States of America, before gaining, quote-unquote, gaining its independence. And the story follows the president, the second president, Matthias Guili. He is the second president and the fourth president, and it follows his struggles to sort of thread between Japan's interests and America's interests in this island, a nation that is free and independent, but being surrounded by so many greater powers really is inevitably not as free and independent as it may seem at first. And that's kind of colonialism is one of the big themes of the book, which I'll get into more in themes, but it's just really impossible to talk about that because that is very much the dominant theme. And the main character, Matthias, has a background in Japan, spent a lot of time in Japan, learned from Japan, and is considered very sympathetic towards Japan, to his detriment politically, but also it's responsible for his rise politically. So that's kind of the plot summary. It's his ultimate downfall, but granted, I say he's the president, but he is a president who has gradually, slowly shifted towards becoming a dictator. So it's not, it's part tragedy in a way, because you do really get to see Matthias as a person and his struggles. But it's also, there's an element of humor to the book. At the start of the book, a bus full of Japanese veterans goes missing, and you get bus reports throughout the book of various places that people have spotted the bus. And being a magical realist tale, some of them get absurd as constellations in the sky to under the water, and all sorts of crazy things that will make you laugh out loud, sort of running in parallel to this very real story with Mateus. So, to whom would I recommend this book? The book reminded me a lot of Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut in the way that it has sort of that island colonization about it, but this time it's actually told from the perspective of an islander rather than somebody outside coming to the island. And I think if you're a fan of Vonnegut's work, if you're a fan of something that is serious but still lighthearted, it doesn't go hard into a lot of like colonialism in terms of like the darker side or death camps or dead natives or anything like that, but there is definitely a serious conversation about it. And like I said, you have these intervals of the chapter with the bus. You have Mateus, who is sympathetic but at the same time sort of comically absurd in the way that certain elements of him are portrayed. So it's definitely on the side of serious, but definitely with a lot of humor and lighter elements too. It doesn't go full hardcore. So I think if you want something that's really serious about it, about this type of thing, you're not going to get it here. Or if you want something that's as zany as Vonnegut, you're not quite going to get that either. But it's still, I'd say, ebbs more on the comical side. So if you're okay with something that's not super, it's not going to be an instant classic or anything, but you can read it and you can have a good time and you can finish it very quickly. Pretty short book. So I would recommend it to that type of person. And overall, I think I would definitely recommend it because, any book that makes me laugh out loud is a book that I would recommend, and there are definitely parts here that made me laugh out loud, particularly, as I've said many times, with regards to the bus. So, pros and cons. I already said, pros definitely has some funny moments. I really like the way that it balances its serious moments and its lighter moments. It feels like the serious moments are given their fair due, while at the same time, it's never lets itself go into sort of full darkness territory. I like Mateus and how well balanced he is as a character, because as a dictator, it's very easy to see that he's wrong, and that he's oppressive, and that he is, in many ways, the bad guy of the story. But at the same time, getting to see his side of things, and getting to see the behind the scenes and the negotiations that go on and whatnot, really does give you kind of a sense of the challenges that he's facing, and how somebody could fall into the mindset of if I don't do it, then there's nobody else who is qualified to take my place and who understands the enemy quite as well as I do. So it handles that aspect very well, I think. In terms of the cons, I would say it's written well enough, it's translated well enough, but it's nothing that's going to really, really stick out in your mind. I wouldn't really call it a con so much as more like a neutral thing. It's not badly written, it's just kind of neutral. Like I said, the fact that it doesn't go super hard into some of these themes can leave it feeling a bit like more of a surface exploration than something getting really deep into the thick of particularly Japanese colonialism, which I appreciate. Going back to the pros really quickly, I appreciate the way that it sort of plays America and Japan against each other, in terms of neither one really being good or really having this island's interest at heart, which I think for a Japanese novel written by a Japanese person, it very much, like, I feel like if this was written by an American person, then America would very much be portrayed as the liberators. And in a sense, there is a semi-liberating air to the way that America comes across in this, but it's very much with the undercurrent of at any moment we are ultimately using you to your own ends. And it's the same with Japan, and the fact that you have a Japanese author who can portray it with that level of sincerity and realism is really a point worthy of respect, in my opinion. So, in terms of the negatives, like I said, if you want like a deep thing on like Imperial Japan during World War II that gets into some of the dark stuff, you're not going to get that. But at the same time, it does feel fairly honest. And there is some sexual assault that goes on in the book that, rather than being sort of called out on, is treated as more of a metaphorical thing, which some people are going to take issue with that. I kind of understand. It does feel a bit underbaked to me, but I don't want to say anything more without getting into spoilers. So those are the pros and the cons as I see them. So last chance before I go into full spoilers and a thematic discussion. So I've already mentioned the main theme is colonialism and how Japan and America are playing this island. And the way that this really comes across in the book is a Japanese man comes with an offer to build a storage facility for fuel tankers, old fuel tankers, off their island, which unto itself is a very risky proposal because oil can leak. These are old tankers. There's no necessary security for them. And on top of that, these are islands where natives still fish, make their living in the sea. So having these big tankers will definitely disrupt that and disrupt the marine life, to say nothing of the fact that this is a coral reef area that would probably get destroyed. So there's a lot of ecological considerations, right from the start, that are very questionable. But then it's also hinted that the fuel tanker thing might just be a front, and that in fact one or two of these boats might be secretly containing a bunch of munitions that, in case of a wartime, and they're using it to sort of hide weapons and munitions away from the rest of the world. But on the flip side, it's not just about the bribery for Mateus that is appealing to this, but keep in mind that this is located in the Pacific Ocean, which, if you know anything about the geopolitics there, and China's, I think it's a 7-point line, where a lot of the territory that they're claiming out there, it becomes very contentious in that sense. So while on the one hand, yes, there's the economics of Japan is going to be paying for this this station, but on the flip side, it's also sort of a guarantee of protection. It's a way of aligning this island closer to Japan. But again, the closer you align yourself with one of these big powers, not just the more you're able to, well, not really, the more you open them up to come in and exert their influence over you, because you're under their control, under their protection, sort of speaking. So it's a way. And then on the flip side, you have America, which again would like to spread its influence, spread its wealth, spread its tourism, basically just use the place as a giant money farm. And the way Mateus is trying to balance America versus Japan versus the independence of it is sort of, it's really difficult. I think when you read it, what it really drives home is the difficulty of being in this position as a smaller island, because while technically the days of being a colony are over, the fact that the matter is, if you're a smaller country nowadays, and particularly if you're a small island country surrounded by a lot of bigger countries, which, even if you're a small land country surrounded by bigger countries, you may be independent, but there's nothing that you can say or do that another country has any reason to listen to you. And in that sense, you can ally with one of these bigger countries to try and guarantee not only protection, but to try and leverage some kind of influence over them. But then at the same time, you open up yourself to that same kind of reverse pressure, and you end up an impromptu colony, not a colony, a colony in all but name, basically. And it's something that I never really thought of a lot, even though I do know that this is something that a lot of places struggle with, especially in East Asia, because of the geopolitics of the area. And not just East Asia, there are other parts like Eastern Europe, I think, I shouldn't say I know, I believe also suffers from a lot of the same things. So it was really nice, well, not nice necessarily, nice, I don't know. It was interesting to read about that, and read about it in such an enjoyable way, because I do think that Matthias is painted as a sort of sympathetic character where, like I said in the pros and cons, he is a dictator and he has done some terrible things. And I think that that's another theme of the book, is the sort of struggle to... When you're in a position where you know so much and you have a unique knowledge set and a unique skill set, that you feel like you start to feel like you're the only one for the job. And there has to be this balance between, on the one hand, maybe you are the only one for the job. Maybe you should use force and force your way through because you are the only one capable of fixing it. But at the same time, there's definitely this question of at what cost, and are you really the only person for the job, or is it all in your head? Is it worth sacrificing your entire democratic system and your people's happiness just to see them persevere in maybe what you would consider the best way possible? Because, what is happiness? What is best for a country? As an American who left America, I certainly have issues with the way that America is being run. And to give a good example of one of those, people always tell me, have said repeatedly the past several years, the economy is doing well, the economy is doing well. And at the same time that, quote unquote, the economy is doing well, wage gaps are growing, people can afford less, people can buy less, prices are going up, because it turns out the economy doing well and the country doing well does not necessarily equate to the country's people doing well. And that's kind of a disconnect between the sort of reality and the ideal. And it's interesting to see that sort of reflected in this book, where, again, maybe Matthias understands Japan better, and this gives him a better leverage over Japan when it comes to negotiating with Japan. But when he's literally assassinating his political rivals and dissolving the legislature, and basically, he is a dictator at that point, is it worth it? Because, maybe without him they risk being a puppet state, but with him, the people are also just under a different kind of totalitarian rule. Even if he is trying to be a more benevolent, quote unquote, dictator, the dictator is still a dictator, one way or the other. But I feel like that is also to focus too much on the obvious, because there's very much a sub-theme going on of culture, and I think it's reflected in the magical realism aspect, where the island culture is portrayed in a more literally magical way. You have seers who can possibly see the future. The one woman, I've already forgotten her name, I'm sorry, the woman who comes to him, who is one of the, I think Yuka was what they were called. She actually doesn't have a name. She just goes by whatever people call her. She can see the future. She can share that vision, although we don't really know if it's 100% the future, a future, or just something that she is showing Matthias, because we never really get into her head. But there's the... her ability to do that. There's the bus that vanishes that may come back, that goes on a, quote unquote, goes on a joyride. And there's all sorts of magic and tradition and ceremony in this island that at the same time is being threatened by the more convenient and technological advancements of the big colonizers. And I say threatened, but the interesting thing is how, in a way, the islanders really don't need, and to a certain extent only so much want, these outside influences. Like, Mateus, before he became president, ran a supermarket, and one of the things that he did, he made the first supermarket chain on the islands, and he was trying to decide what should be their sort of premier flagship item, and he brought back cup noodles from Japan, and they became a big hit. But they didn't necessarily replace the traditional cuisine or the traditional culture. And when it comes to things like cars and whatnot, like, yeah, some of the islanders drive, but at the same time, they've got this sort of chilled, laid back, like, who needs the noise, who needs the pollution, stuff like that. They're just as content to walk places, to ride their boats, and to, sort of live their easy, laid back lifestyle. And I'm really envious of this, because it calls to mind back when people were colonizing the United States. A lot of the white people that would leave to go live with the Indians, to live the sort of quote-unquote savage lifestyle. And there is something to the sort of simplicity and the old way of life that we do end up losing a lot in our modern, just super technological, super convenient state, that I think to certain less developed, quote-unquote developed nations and people can almost seem, on the one hand it can seem enviable, but on the other hand, what do you have to lose? What do you have to give up? You have to care about so much more. You have to be distracted so much more. You have to be worried so much more, that even though you have more things as a result of it, you also spend so much more time worried and so much less time living. So I definitely think that contrast in the lifestyle and the native culture versus the sort of first world hyper-consumerist culture is definitely a theme of the book, and something that the author wants to get across, in the sense that a lot of the people are happy with their lives. And so even though there is this sense that, well, maybe they would be happier with a McDonald's, or maybe they'd be happier with, Amazon 2-day shipping or whatever, but is it worth it? At what cost? Will it really make these people happier, or are they happy the way they are? In that dichotomy, I feel is really a huge part of the book. And the other thing that is one other big thing that I'll talk about is legacy and what you leave behind. Mateus is sort of the progeny of the first president, whom everyone loves, and did die of a heart attack. So Mateus didn't have any involvement in his death. And Mateus himself was also greatly assisted by a Japanese man who went on to have his own big political career. So in this sense, Mateus got to the presidency as the result of a lot of people helping him along the way. But at the same time, he himself has not left anything for the future, left any kind of progeny, has not raised anybody or lifted anybody or created a program for anybody to eventually take his place. He has been so focused on being the leader and being in charge that he never really thought to create some kind of progeny. And this is reflected in the aforementioned sexual assault scene. He ends up going with this woman, and he ends up raping her because he is... he's thinking about a time that he was having sex with a woman and she didn't get pregnant, and it was somebody accused him of being dry, being sterile, of not being able to have a progeny or make a future. And he, in a sort of fit of rage, goes in and, like I said, while she's asleep and tired out, she never wakes up during it, but has intercourse, rapes basically this woman, and leaves in shame over what happens. And she never brings it up to his face, except at the very end, after she has outed the fact that he was responsible for killing the previous president. She hints that she is pregnant with his child, and he eventually goes on to kill himself, because even when he does manage to create a future, a progeny, a son, it will never be a part of his life, which I think is another big sort of tragedy of the character, but at the same time, tragedy sort of very much of his own making, where, you know, in the end it turned out that he was able to have a child, but the way he went about it and the way he did it was so corrupt and so vile that even though it will exist completely separate of him and separate of his, like I guess that's still separate of him, but yeah. So those are just a few of the themes. It's pretty interesting book, pretty enjoyable book. Like I said, quick read, not going to super tax your brain, and it might make you laugh a little bit. So that's the Navidad incident. Right now I'm kind of bouncing between Dance 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 and The Wolves of Eternity by Nosgard, and obviously Murakami's Dance Dance Dance. So I don't know if I'll be doing a review on either. Depends on how I feel. But until next time, take care.